So other than that, offense can come out of several places, right? Everything in this game is technically a mix-up. Am I going to go low? Am I going to go mid? That's a mix-up right there. Standing still, doing nothing is a mix-up. Because I could do this, and I could do this, and you wouldn't have any clue to know. However, because Lili doesn't have mix-ups built into strings outside of this like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4 situation, she's not a strong mix-up character, but she does have them. And so there are requirements to be able to do stuff like this. So the first thing I want to look at is a really good pressure situation for Lili. And there's two major ways to get to it. And that is forward 1 plus 2. When this hits your opponent, this is plus 3, maybe 4. 3. Okay, that's what I thought. This is plus 3 and forces your opponent to crouch. You see the little symbol there? You can obviously see she's crouching. So this move on hit, plus 3, opponent crouch. This move on block, down forward 3, does the same thing. Plus 3, the opponent is forced into crouch. So this is a very good situation for Lili all around. Pretty much every time you have them knocked down and you go for Oki, you want that. You want to drop this right on their head, exactly like Mishima players do with their forward 4. They put that heel kick right on the top of your melon and you're trapped again. That's what this move does for Lili. Even on block. You see on hit is plus 8. On block, still plus 3. So both these result in the same thing. Plus 3 frames for you, and they are crouching. So you want this as much as you can. This is great for wake up. And then when you're up close, if you go for this move, and you happen to catch people with it, okay, cool. I just got that hit. Let me go for this pressure situation. So with the opponent in that situation, there's basically 4 things that can happen. They don't respect the frame trap, and they try to counterattack you. Hooray. They do respect the frame trap and they just stay there and block like they're supposed to. Also good. They could try to be clever and stay crouched and maybe try to avoid a jab or something real quick, right? Let's say you want to do frame trap and then jab them. They could try to duck, right? And think they're going to be clever about it. Okay. Or they sidestep. Even if you're forced into a crouch, you can always sidestep up. So they might want to try to sidewalk out of the mix-up entirely. So out of those 4 things, if they want to challenge with a button, that's usually good, right? Because that means they're going to get counter hit. I'm going to be faster than you when I have those 3 frames. But she doesn't have a magic 4 like Kazumi or a 1-2-1 string like Dragunov. Look at Brian and Kunimitsu. That 1-2-4 is all guaranteed on a counter hit, knocked down. Great stuff. Lili doesn't have anything like that. If you look at the math, they're forced into crouch, so their fastest move is their while standing 4 at 11 frames. Obviously, Lei and Lee can do this at 10, so that changes it even worse for Lili. But most characters at 11 frame while standing 4. Plus the 3 frame disadvantage. That means their fastest attack is now 14, okay? If I put them into this situation, their while standing 4 is now basically 14 frames. So it means anything I do that's 13 or faster will beat them outright. Well, I don't have anything that counter hits faster than 13. The closest thing is this, which is 14. I would get this counter hit, but it would trade. And so I wouldn't, I'll take damage too. So that's out. So at 13 or faster, what do you have? Your 1-2 strings, these aren't even guaranteed on counter hit. Your 12 frame moves are unsafe. You don't want to just throw those out there for pressure. But at 13, you have this little gem that we covered in the punishment tools of back 2-1. Now, what's interesting about this, even if it were a counter hit, you still don't get your 3rd hit guaranteed. Lili is the most divergent character in the cast when it comes to this stuff. How many characters have a 3rd hit that is guaranteed on counter hit, or when it counter hits by itself has a screw attack? She has none of that stuff. She has no counter hit properties in like any of her strings. So back 2-1, both, nothing on counter hit. So you're even throwing that out the window. The reason we're going to talk about this is because it's 13 frames. If they did it while standing 4, this would hit them guaranteed. They would always lose to this. So what's worth mentioning here is because you could do this and go into do glide, or you could go into back turn. And since we're only talking about the situation where they press buttons, we know this is going to hit. On blocks, it's a slightly different story, but one case at a time. If they're going to press a button and you do this, they get hit by this and you're plus 7. So you can go into back turn plus 7, which is just feast territory. Anything you do will beat them no matter what. They try to do anything and they get messed up. You go for low pokes, you go for your mid counter hit launchers, you go for the big boy, whatever it is. It's anything you want when you do back 2-1 into back turn on hit. Do glide is the same. Back 2-1 forward into do glide with plus 7 is really good. You can do kind of anything you want here. You could go for the low if you wanted to. You could go for another frame trap, etc., etc. The +7 you get from this move guaranteeing to hit them is really, really good. So that's the best option, in my opinion, for Lili when it comes to beating out their buttons. In the lack of a magic 4 or anything faster than that, this is all the best you get. Right? Other characters at 13 frames, if they knew a counter hit was coming, they could do dirty, dirty stuff. Lili doesn't have that. Right? Just look at King and Armor King could just do a back 1. Steve could do a back 1 and boom. Combo, right? Lili doesn't have that. So this is what you got. You got utility. You got a move that you know you can hit them with that leads you to more interesting, tricky stuff. Or you can do back 2-1 and do glide and sidestep, cancel, whatever you want. Being flexible and being tricky is the name of the game. So this is a good situation for her to do that. This is unfortunate, that's all that she gets. Nothing really truly guaranteed, just a little bit more mix-up power. So if they don't respect your frame trap and they just block, they just stand there and block, this is also really good, right? You can do whatever you want in that case. If you know they're not going to retaliate, do it again. Trap them again. Keep doing it. They're just going to stay paralyzed. If you know they're not going to do anything, you could go for low pokes. You could do down ones. You could do for jab straight. Whatever you want to do. Back 1 into this offense. Do this again, right? You can do anything you want. This is probably one of the best situations when you know they aren't going to do anything at a disadvantage, right? If you know they're going to just stand there and chill and take this, the C is yours. You can do anything you want at this point. Run whatever offense you feel like. Sidestep. Try to bait them out of there. You know what I mean? Do whatever you want. Hesitate for a second. Then sidestep, you know? Anything you can think of is good here. This lets you set up moves like that are normally way too slow to get away with up close. You could do all kinds of things. You could do this. Whatever you think of if you know they're going to stay there. If you think they might duck, if you think they're clever to stay and crouch and duck some jabs, just make sure whatever your heart desires is a mid. Quarter circle 2-1, another example here, right? Great option, mid, and you can confirm that hit. If they think they're going to be clever by ducking, just stick to mid. They're not going to challenge you, but they're going to try to duck and maybe take a little advantage that way, right? Just standing there blocking, they get nothing. They want to try to be proactive and maybe duck some highs. Just don't do highs there, right? So whenever you do this frame trap, just don't do a high afterward. That's all I can say about this. Make sure whatever you do next is a mid. That covers that base entirely. And the last thing, if they're going to be clever and try to sidestep out of the mix-up altogether, you guessed it. Quarter circle 2-1 covers that base as well. Quarter circle 2-1, confirm it. Same with the 3+4, and they're right back into an even heavier frame trap this time at -6. The hits keep on coming when it comes to these 2 quarter circle moves. They are just excellent all around. They cover so many utilities, even in this up-close pressure situation. These moves are still really good. The backup alternative here is forward 3, as we mentioned. This is one of the cases where it's good. Because you have them frame trapped right here, forward 3 is still in that range. That's the only reason I mention it here, is because that will cover the homing as well. And if they happen to press a really, really slow button, like a really slow button, this could counter hit them. This is a counter hit launcher, but at 20 frames, they needed to press the slowest button ever for that to work. So it's really more homing than anything else. And it's easier to do, technically, than it is to do quarter circle 2-1 sometimes. So it's only effective up close, and since you are up close, this is worth a mention. So that's a pretty deep situation, right? That's worth looking at a lot, because there's micro versions of that everywhere. This is similar. This is +3. It just doesn't come with the crouch. Other than that, the situation is the same. Are they going to respect it? Do whatever they want. Are they not going to respect it? Stuff them with whatever counter hit tools you have. Lili just doesn't have good counter hit tools. So if the person knows that, they might be prone to challenging buttons. Just make sure you're ready for that and stick out quicker moves or punch parry, you know, anything like that. So this is just a particularly good one, because anytime you have Oki, you're going to hit him with this most of the time. So you better learn what to do out of this situation. If they go for buttons, you use this and set them up again. If they go for nothing, repeat, go for lows, homing, whatever it might be. So when it comes to other mix-ups that Lili can get on offense, because we said there's not really strings that can do it, she requires a setup. So that was a good setup that comes from Oki. More often than not. You can do this normally, right? You can just kind of run up and do that to him. It'll work. Just don't over-rely on his move. Again, no range, no tracking. But this is a good one that's going to occur a lot, especially if you're throwing this thing out all day up close. Every time you catch them with that, huge pressure opportunity. One of her other ways to do some mixing up is back 1. We talked about in the do glide section that any of the moves that transition into do glide on block are very bad. You can see how back 2-1 is -4. They're all bad on block, except for back one into do glide. This is actually +1. That's what makes this the only one that you can just kind of run offense from. If they're standing there blocking, doing nothing, you do back one and do glide, you got some potential here, but it's not great. It's not perfect and it's not airtight. So there are things they can do to beat you here. So I'll kind of want to go over this real quick. This general situation. So back one into do glide. Let's look at what happens here. Back one into 1-2. This move loses to 13 frames. If you do this as fast as you can, anything they do in between is 13 frames beats that, straight up. If they went for a jab, however, if they do a jab right away here, this will high crush it for just an instant. For 10 or 11 frames, this will beat jabs. After that, it loses, right? It loses the jabs for frames 12 and 13, and it loses to everything after that. So it is possible if you have an opponent that's jab happy, every time you do this, they want to jab, that'll beat them. That'll go under their jab and beat them. Exceptions to this are Feng. If Feng does back one, this will hit. Even though it's a high, that's got a hitbox that beats this high crush. This is not a tech crouch. It just has a low hitbox that it goes under almost every normal jab in the game. That's all. This is not a crouching state, but it just happens to avoid most jabs. Anyway, this loses to 13 frames. That's what I want to talk about, is why these things lose. Back one into 1-2. Loses to anything 13 or faster. Back one into 2-1. This loses to all 12 frame moves. Back one into 3+4. This move is so fast, we use it all the time. Well, guess what? It still loses to 10 frame jabs. A straight up jab beats this move, period. Okay, now we're losing everything, right? Let's look at this full crouch slide. Technically not a do glide move, but you can access it like this. This beats your jabs now. It didn't used to. Jab used to also beat this. So now this does beat jabs, but it loses to, and a hop kick will beat this straight up. Lots of things will still beat this. It just goes under jabs for a brief moment. How about while standing 3? Yep, loses to everything that's 14 and faster. And the great while standing 4. Okay, let's do the math here, right? +1 and my 11 frame while standing 4, that's perfect. 10 frame jab, that should trade, right? At the best, the trade, perfect. Nope, not the case. They changed this voluntarily from the last game. This gap now loses to everything that's 12 and faster, which is kind of crazy. I guess they felt that was too good. At best, your opponent could jab this transition and they would trade. Now they can do 13 moves and trade with you and then beat you straight up. That was such a huge, silly nerf in my opinion, but it does keep Lili from getting away with this all day. Now Lili's have to think about it. So what did we learn here? 10 frame jab beats everything, right? The only thing it doesn't beat is this, because it's a high and it goes under it. Okay, well what about a 10 frame duck jab? And the short answer is yes, that beats everything. Everything you do, back one into do glide, everything that comes to your little fancy loses to duck jab. So then you think, okay, well then, how's this even a mix-up? Why would I ever want to do anything here? Because what did we say in the beginning is the strength of this character? Sidestep. Sidestep. If you know they're going to go for that duck jab to beat your mix-up here, you just go to do glide and you sidestep. You sidestep and you hop kick and it beats that duck jab right to the punch. It's hard to call this reliable, because let's say if they do anything else, right? Let's say if it's a Negan and they do like 1-2-2 or 1-2-4 to try to beat your mix up here. All right, you can do this and you can sidestep there, but the second and third hit of their string are going to hit Marduk 1-2 strings and shit like that. Even if you sidestep, if you set them up for the jab and you sidestep, the rest of their string will make contact with you. They'll turn around and they will track you. So really the duck jab is the one that you want them to do so you can hop kick it. Other than that, sidestepping can beat their follow-up, but it can also get you hit as well. So side walking, I think, is a little bit better maybe. You go into do glide and you start side walking. Because if they did a string right there, you could catch their back easily. That's the best thing that could happen to you. So otherwise, this isn't much of a mix-up because they can proactively beat it out. Even at +1, they still win with a jab or a duck jab. You have to bait that jab out and then try to beat it yourself with your sidestep. The other mix-up situation I want to talk about, which is more of a conventional forced mix-up for them, is back turned. Couple ways to achieve this state, as we talked about in that first section. Back 2-1 is going to be one of your most practical ones. Using this as a 13 frame punish into back turned. We talked about this pressure situation. If they go for a button, you use this and you can go back turned. Forward, forward 4 is also another good way to do it. I want to turn blocking off again so don't... No, that's fine. Blocking is fine. But anyway, forward, forward 4, when it hits them and you go into back turn, you're +4. These are good situations. Even if you do... If back 2-1 gets blocked and you go into back turn, -4 is not too bad. You can... That'll still beat jabs. Down 4 would still beat any jabs they do. So would, you know, the big sweep. That'll still beat their jab. Not everything, right? -4 isn't great, but on hit... If this is +7, the world is yours. You can do whatever you want to. This on hit, +4, you can do whatever you want to. So the key mix-up out of back turned is basically a mid versus low situation again. 1+2, a safe mid launcher, right? You would just go for this every time. And if it hits, hooray. Other than that, there's very little drawbacks. Just go for this all day. Safe mid launcher is really good stuff. If they try to duck jab you, however, sometimes this could lose. At 13 frames... If you're -4, they could duck jab and beat this, right? So, okay, what if they duck jab? Remember, you have a hop kick. You have a back turn hop kick that would beat duck jabs. This is only 9 frames. Even at -4, this still wins. So you have a safe mid launcher in 1+2. You have an unsafe mid launcher in up +4 that beats lows. So that covers a great variety of their counter options right away. If you think they're a duck jabby player, just hop kick them. And if they're not, then you can just go for the safe version and you go for the harder mix-up. Back turn 2 risks almost nothing. This move is safe on block, it's a mid, and if they got counter hit in here, you get a launcher that way. So you don't really have to risk anything, and you might get rewarded with a combo if they got antsy here. So those are your mid options, pretty cool. The other mid option is this 3+4. If they got counter hit, this is a slow move. It's only really good for if they try to do like a 1-1-2. If they did a high string and this ducks under that first high and it catches them in a counter hit in the middle of that string, great. Otherwise, this is a tough little nut to crack. It's going to be hard to hit people with that counter hit. And it's a little bit risky in the back. The first one by itself is -11. The ending is -10, still back turned. Remember, it takes 6 frames to turn around, so you can get bopped for doing this. So that's the mid that's the least practical in my opinion. Back turn 2 is the most practical, but if you want a launcher, you have a safe launcher and you have an unsafe launcher. Those are all just mids out of back turned. When you have the frame advantage, you can do whatever you want there. So let's look at your lows. Your lows basically consist of the practical one, a down 4, which does just no damage, but it's +3 on hit. So this +3 on hit right into more offense is really good stuff. You didn't have to leverage anything. You go for this and go right back into it. You use the back turn like, oh God, what's she going to do? I'm just going to poke and I'm going to go back to business, you know? Fake them out that way. Or you go for it all and do the big back turn down 3+4. This is big and dumb and slow, but again, beats highs. If they happen to jab, she has a lot of stuff here that's going to beat those highs. So that's the classic mix-up out of back turn. It's actually pretty good in my opinion. The lows are all or nothing, right? You could go for a huge all or nothing low or a basic poke, and it'll hit them low and go right back into neutral offense. That's a good tool in my opinion, because you could even hit them with this and, you know, sidestep. That's what she does, to stay flexible. Don't commit, stay flexible. If you're going to commit, it better be to something cool. That's the only rule that I have. It better be something worthwhile, and it better work, you know? And then other than that, tons of mids. Mid launchers, mid pokes, mid counter hits. Great mids out of back turn. All of this stuff is mostly safe, which is very cool. So back turn mix-ups are pretty good. It's just a situational thing for you to be able to get into it. Forward, forward 4 is a good one. Back 2-1 as a punish or as an interrupt is also a good one. Some of like 3 we talked about at mid-range. If you're out here at range 2 and you catch them with that 3, this is still viable. Like I say, if this hits, you're only -2, -3. So you could do the math and see what's going to work, right? If you're -3 in this situation and you do 1+2, it trades with an enemy jab. But if you're -3 and you do this, you win. So you gotta kind of have to study the math and see what works there at a certain frame disadvantage. So this on block, you could even go for this and they wouldn't be able to beat it out. Kind of cool. And if you did think they're going to jab, that always beats jabs and makes you +3. So that's really, of all the crazy, flippy, bouncing, mix-up, acrobatic stuff she has, being able to go into a back turn, force mix-up, and just do it down 4 and get out of there is one of the most powerful tools. So I think that's offense in a very big nutshell. That's everything you have to stand up and move around and poke with, all your crouching moves, your lows, how to use homing, how to stay at range and fight, how to get back in, what are your advantages at range and disadvantages up close. We talked about mix-ups and how you can create them out of Oki pressure, create them out of do glide, and then faking out do glide, or using your back turn stance to get some really, really good mix-ups out there. So next up, let's talk about defense.